Hello there, my fellow myth and fantasy nerds. My name is Tanner, and I'd like to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. So, I've been on a bit of a fairy tale kick lately, so for this video, I thought, why not retell one of the more classic fairy tales in my own style? However, as I'm sure we all know about the ones that have already been adapted into many different movies, especially the ones adapted by the House of Mouse, I thought I would tell one that hasn't yet had the Disney treatment. Although, how they would adapt this story specifically is anyone's guess. Now, as always with my myth, legend, and fairy tale retellings, link to the playlist up on the cards and in the description down below, I will be taking this story and adding some of my own creative liberties to it when and where needed, while still keeping it as close to the original as possible. Also, as a quick reminder, every story, including this one, has many retellings and variations, and this is but one of them. So, as always, please make sure to leave a like on this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe down below. Pretty please! It'll help me make more content for you. And without further ado, allow me to introduce to you the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived an old miller and his only daughter. The miller's daughter was known throughout their village as an amazing spinner. In fact, her talent for spinning was a bit of a bragging point for her father. He would even go as far as telling people, "Why, my daughter is so talented, she could very well spin straw into gold." One day, one of the king's soldiers overheard the miller bragging about his daughter, and, not knowing this was an exaggeration, immediately took this information to the king. Now, the kingdom was in a lot of debt, so any way they could get enough gold to pay off those debts was immediately brought before the king. The king was intrigued by this notion. "So, you think that this maiden, the daughter of the miller, is able to spin straw into gold?" "That's what the man said," the soldier replied. "And if there's any chance that this maiden has such an extraordinary gift, why not take advantage of it to pay off some of our debts?" The king, now immediately on board, sent messengers to bring the maiden to his palace. When she arrived, he led her into a small room filled with straw, with a spinning wheel in the center. "So I've heard you are able to spin straw into gold. Now our kingdom is in debt to many of our neighboring kingdoms, so we need this entire room of straw spun into gold by tomorrow. I'll be back in the morning to check in on you." The maiden looked questioningly at the king. "Your Majesty, if you please, hypothetically, what if you come back tomorrow and there is no gold to be seen?" The king grimaced. "Well, then we'd have to throw both you and your father in the dungeon for the rest of your lives for lying to us and pushing us further into debt. Well, have a nice evening." The king turned and left the room. The maiden was distraught. She didn't want to be locked in the dungeon forever, nor did she want her father locked up either. And yet there was no way she could spin all this straw into gold, let alone in one night. She sat down on her knees and started to sob. Suddenly, she felt a strong wind blow past her, and then heard a strange voice. "Hello, my dear." When the maiden looked up, she saw a strange creature standing in front of her. The creature was short, only about knee high, with pointed ears and thin, twig like limbs, and dressed in clothes with many bold, clashing colors. The maiden leapt back at the sight. Who and what are you? The creature chuckled. Who I am doesn't matter right now. However, as to what? He paused. Well, that's another matter entirely. The king wishes for you to spin all this straw into gold, yes? The maiden nodded, still bewildered. Well, then, I may just be your ticket to freedom, the creature laughed. As it happens, I have some magical skill, which I'd be all too happy to use to help you out. For the right price, that is. But I have nothing to give you, sir, the maiden said. The creature looked her up and down and then said, How's about that ring on your finger? This ring belonged to my mother, the maiden said, appalled. It's all I have left of her. Very well, I guess I'll come visit you in the dungeon then. With that, the maiden took the ring off her finger and gave it to the little man. He sat down at the spinning wheel and started spinning. Handfuls and handfuls of straw became spool after spool of gold thread. As she watched him work, something about how the wheel spun and how the gold thread wound around the spool felt rather relaxing to her. Soon she laid her head down and fell right to sleep. The next morning, the maiden was awoken by the king and his men opening the door. As they looked around the room, they saw spool after spool of gold thread. The king was impressed by the work that had gone on overnight. Come with me, dear maiden, he said. The maiden followed the king, expecting him to lead her out of the castle, but instead he led her to another room, much bigger than the first one, filled to the brim with straw. Since you did so well last night, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a fluke, so I would like you to spin all this straw into gold by morning. Remember, if you don't get it done by the time I come back tomorrow, then you and your father will be locked in the dungeon. The maiden sat down and started to sob. Oh, what am I going to do? I can't spin all this straw into gold. Just like the night before, a strong gust of wind blew into the room, and when the maiden looked up, she saw the strange creature she met the night before. Good evening, he said to her. I see you are in need of my services again. Relieved, the maiden sat up. Oh, yes, good sir. The king wants me to spin all this straw into gold by morning. Can you help me? Alas, I'd love to. However, just like last time, I'll need you to give me something in return. He looked her up and down and then spotted something shiny at her throat. I'll take that necklace, if you please. The maiden clasped her throat in horror. This necklace belonged to my grandmother. It's all I have left of her. All right, but I don't think anyone will be able to appreciate it when you're in the dungeon. The maiden sighed, took off the necklace, and gave it to the creature. Just like last time, the maiden watched as the creature took his seat and started spinning. Handful after handful of straw was transformed magically before the maiden's eyes into spool after spool of gold thread. Also, like last time, the maiden felt relaxed watching the creature work and soon fell into a deep sleep. By the time the sun came up the next morning, the creature had gone, and in place of the straw there sat spools upon spools of gold thread. The king walked in and saw the impressive amount of gold in the room, and looked at the maiden sleeping peacefully. He knocked on the door gently, and she woke with a start. "Surely this is an amazing sight to behold," the king said to her. "If you please, I'd like to ask once again for you to come with me." Hesitantly, the maiden took his hand, and he led her to the biggest room yet. It was filled from floor to ceiling with straw, enough to feed all the cows and sheep in all the land. "I'd like you to spin all this straw into gold one more time. Once again, if you fail, your father and you will be sent to the dungeon. However, if you succeed, I will make you my queen and never ask for you to spin anything ever again." Once again, the maiden sat down and sobbed, and once again the creature blew in and appeared before her. The creature looked around the room and whistled. "That is quite a lot of straw. Let me guess, the king wants you to turn all this into gold as well?" "Yes," the maiden sniffled. "Only I don't think even you can spin it all in one night." "You never know," the creature replied. "With the right price, I can do anything." "But I have nothing else to give you except the clothes off my back." The creature tutted. "I have no need for clothes." He thought for a moment, and then a mischievous grin appeared on his face. "Tell you what, I'll do it for you, and in exchange, when you become queen, you will give your firstborn child to me. Fair enough?" The maiden was appalled. "I could never do such a thing." The creature shrugged. "Fine, but I'm sure you won't have a child when you're in the dungeon." The maiden thought it over, and then said, "Fine, if you get it done tonight, I will do as you ask." The creature cackled and set to work. By the time the maiden woke up the next morning, the king had already been staring at all the spools of gold thread that now filled the room. "My dear, with this much gold, we can pay off all our debts to the other kingdoms and still be the richest kingdom of them all. Will you please do me the honor of being my queen?" When the maiden thought about it, she decided it was better to be the queen than a miller's daughter or locked in the dungeon, so she said yes. As queen, the maiden was never made to spin so much as another thread again. And with all the excitement of getting married and becoming queen, she forgot all about the deal she made with the creature. For a while, anyway. Time passed, and soon the king and queen became the proud parents of a beautiful baby princess. The kingdom rejoiced, and everyone, whether peasant or noble, was invited to her royal christening. However, the kingdom was cut rather short by the sudden appearance of a strange creature. "Greetings, your majesties," the creature said, bowing low. "What is the meaning of this?" the king said incredulously. "Who are you, and why do you come here unannounced and uninvited?" "Who I am doesn't matter, your kingliness," the creature replied. "As for why I am here, I only wish to collect what is owed to me." The king heard a small gasp, and he turned to see his wife, looking as though she had seen a ghost. Her skin was turning a sickly green color, and her eyes were wide with fear. "What do you want?" the king said, turning back to the creature. The creature smiled wide. "Why don't you ask your darling queen? She knows why I am here." The king turned to look at his wife again. "Is this true, my love?" he asked her. "Do you really know what this creature wants?" The queen met her husband's gaze, and she looked to be on the verge of tears. She nodded and said quietly, "He wants our firstborn child. He wants our daughter." The king stared at his wife. He then turned and addressed the crowd. "Please leave us. The queen, this creature, and I need to discuss things privately." Other than the king, the queen, and the little creature, everyone who was invited left the throne room immediately. The king then turned to face his queen. "Why? Why did you promise our firstborn to this creature?" The queen started sobbing. "Because I couldn't spin straw into gold, but he could. I didn't want to be thrown into the dungeon, and I didn't want my father thrown into the dungeon, so he spun for me, as long as I traded something of value to him. The first couple of nights he only took my necklace and my ring, but on the third night I had nothing else to give him, so I—" "So she promised me her firstborn, once she became queen," the creature interrupted, and cackled triumphantly. "Please," the queen said quietly, "isn't there any way to keep our baby? We can give you gold, jewels, land, titles, anything but our child, please." She started sobbing again. "The princess is all that I want," the creature said. "However, how's about we play a little game? You can keep her if and only if you can guess my name." So the king and queen immediately started guessing the creature's name. "Is it Michael, John, or Adam?" said the queen. "Nope." "William, Robert, Harold?" asked the king. "Not those either." "Is it Marcus, Zachariah, or David?" "Not even close." On and on they went, the king and queen guessing every name they could think of, but nothing worked. The creature cackled. "Well, it's been fun, but you'll never be able to guess my name, so you may as well hand the princess over." "Wait," the queen said. "Can't we at least have 1 week to guess your name?" The creature thought about it. "Very well, I'll give you 1 week, and if you don't guess my name by then, the princess is mine for the taking." Cackling, the creature turned around and disappeared in a gust of wind. After apologizing to her husband for lying, and him reassuring her that "I kind of figured spinning straw into gold may have been a bit of an exaggeration," the king sent for his 4 fastest horsemen and instructed them to travel in 4 different directions. "Find the creature, wherever he may be, and learn his name for us." All 4 horsemen rode off, but close to the end of the week, 3 of them had returned with nothing. However, the 4th horseman rode in and gave the king and queen the news. "I heard a cackling sound in the woods, and when I found it, I saw the creature that you described to me, laughing to himself and skipping around a fire. He was very boastful, this little man, and he seemed distracted enough he didn't notice me approaching." The horseman paused before continuing on. "He was even singing a little song to himself around the fire. 'Oh, the king and queen shall lose my little game, their little princess shall be mine to claim. Oh, they will hang their heads in shame, for Rumpelstiltskin is my true name.'" The king and queen were elated to know this piece of information, but they knew they couldn't just say his real name right away. They drew up a list of all the most ridiculous names they could think of, hoping to lull him into a false sense of security. Finally, the big day arrived, and the creature appeared before the king and queen. The king and queen started listing off nonsense names as they planned. Is it Fuzzy Wuzzy? Tiddlywinks? Noodaloots? The king asked. Wrong again, the creature giggled. What about Wiggly Giggly? Krusty Bottom? Quackerjack? Getting colder. Well, we only have one more name on this list, the king said. The creature rubbed his hands together, thinking there was no way they would ever guess his name. Would your name happen to be Rumpelstiltskin? The queen asked, with a slight smirk. Rumpelstiltskin's jaw practically hit the floor. There was no way the queen could have guessed his name correctly. The creature, furious, stormed out of the castle, quite literally, and disappeared without a trace. From that day onwards, the king and queen ruled their kingdom in peace and harmony. Their daughter grew up to be a fair and just queen, and no one ever saw or heard from Rumpelstiltskin ever again. And there we have it. That was the story of Rumpelstiltskin. If you liked this video and you want more, please consider leaving a like and subscribing down below so you don't miss any new content from me. Also, if you have any other ideas that you want to see in any future videos, please leave your suggestions in the comments down below. Who knows? It might just happen. Alright, well, that's all the time I have for this video, so I'll see you all next week with some brand new content for ya. See you guys then.